The Trump administration notified Russia last week that it was withdrawing from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Agreement, or INF. Arms control experts decried the move. In a moment, Nick Schifrin talks with the State Department's top arms control official. But first, Nick has some background.
We have seen what can be accomplished when we pull together.
It was 1987, and President Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev laid a cornerstone of nuclear arms reduction, a treaty that eliminated an entire class of U.S. and Soviet missiles. In the 1970s and 80s, the U.S. and Soviet Union deployed mobile, nuclear-tipped missiles to Europe. Under INF, both sides removed thousands of warheads and destroyed ground-launched missiles with a range of 300 to 3,400 miles. But for the last few years, the U.S. says Russia deployed this missile that violates the INF Treaty. Russia refused American requests to destroy it, so last week the U.S. suspended its participation.
While we followed the agreement and the rules to the letter, Russia repeatedly violated its terms.
But Russia says this U.S. missile defense system could be modified to launch an offensive missile, and therefore the U.S. is the violator. Last weekend, Russian President Vladimir Putin also suspended Russia's INF participation, and this week the Russian military vowed to develop new ground-launched missiles. But Russia's not the only U.S. concern. U.S. officials say China and Iran each have more than 1,000 medium-range missiles.
Perhaps we can negotiate a different agreement, adding China and others, or perhaps we can't, in which case we will outspend and out-innovate all others by far.
That presidential promise raises questions about an arms race, as the U.S. is currently debating what to do about another arms control cornerstone. The New START Treaty, signed in 2010 by President Obama and then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. It limits the number of long-range nuclear weapons and is up for renewal in 2021.
And we are joined now by Andrea Thompson, Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security at the State Department. Undersecretary Thompson, thank you very much. Welcome to NewsHour.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me.
What's the plan to avoid an arms race, or are you trying to get Russia into an arms race?
You know, we're not trying to get Russia into an arms race. As I tell folks, we've remained in compliance with the INF Treaty and all of our other arms control treaties where Russia has violated that. So when folks point to an arms race, my counterpoint is that Russia started an arms race, and it started it years ago when it violated the INF Treaty.
Does that mean you are okay if an arms race begins now?
You know, it's not an arms race. It's upholding what's right for arms control regimes. I remind folks that we've called out Russia repeatedly. Our partners and allies have called out Russia repeatedly, and they continue to deny that they're violating the treaty. If you allow a treaty party to violate it with no consequences, you've now undermined all the arms control.
But this isn't the first time in the last few decades of arms control that both sides have thought the other one was not complying by the treaty. And so why not consider an offer that's been on the table? The Russians examined the missile defense systems that we talked about, that they have a problem with, which do have the mechanical and electronic components that could launch an offensive missile. And you examine the Russian missile in return.
Well, the difference is, Nick, that Russia's in violation of a material breach of the INF Treaty, and our partners and allies have been consistent with that. No one has come forward and said, you know what, you're right, U.S. Maybe Russia's not made a mistake here. Consistent. You saw the NATO statement in December after the Secretary made his announcement. You saw the strong NATO statement this past weekend after the President made his announcement. We continue to present that intelligence and information to Russia. They continue to disavow that. They've also countered with our systems that are in violation. No party other than Russia has said that these systems are in violation, and we continue to show them the intelligence why they are in compliance.
Right, but Lockheed itself, when you go on their website, describes the capacities of those missile defense systems as the capacity to have offensive. Fine, the software may not be oriented that way, but they do have the capacity. Don't the Russians have a point there? And why not exhaust all possibilities and examine the Russian missile, and they examine the missile defense system?
You know, they don't have a point there. We have remained in compliance with the INF Treaty. It's clear. We've had inspections from their teams, and vice versa. Our technical experts have met. We've consulted with partners and allies, and again, everyone looks at the system and says, you know what system isn't in compliance is the SSC-8.
How does removing the U.S. from the INF Treaty eliminate the threat posed by the Russian missile?
The threat posed was initiated by Russia. Our obligations is, one, to fulfill our obligations for the treaty, which we've done. But first and foremost, it underscores all of that, is safety and security of the American people. Russia had chosen to violate it. We are now, by suspending our obligations, can conduct the research and development for those systems. But again, the foundation for all of this is the safety and security of the American people.
So if the foundation is the safety and security of American people and American allies,
correct.
The threat posed that you say is posed by the Russian missile that you say abrogates the INF, how does withdrawing from the INF actually eliminate that threat?
The threat is there. We are now able to conduct the research and development to put our systems into place. The system's already there. As I tell for the American public and those watching, this isn't a system that's in the lab. This isn't a prototype. Russia has fielded multiple battalions, manned and equipped, that can range our partners and allies and Americans abroad now. You
just used the phrase conduct research and development into U.S. systems. Are you planning to deploy any ground-launched cruise missiles to Europe?
That's not in the plan, but what I can tell you, when we develop next steps, it will be in consultation with partners and allies, and DoD has had the lead for this and has been very clear on next steps.
Been talking to NATO officials, and they say that the U.S. has briefed NATO on a plan to test a new ground-launched cruise missile after the next 6 months, after the INF is officially over. Will you test new ground-launched cruise missiles in 6 months?
First, I'll never project our next steps, nor will I speak for my Department of Defense counterparts. The important the piece there is it's consulting with partners and allies. As we met with the Russians in Geneva on January 15th, and on January 16th, we're in Brussels briefing our NATO partners. We'll continue to do that.
I want to move to the New START treaty, which, as we discussed, talks about long-range nuclear missiles. Mm-hmm. To extend New START beyond 2021, will you ask for new terms with the Russians?
Well, the 2021 is, as you can point out, a couple years away. We've got time with New START. And the important point there is we've met our central limits with New START. We're in compliance with the New START treaty. And quite candidly, Russia is in compliance at this point with the New START treaty. So the 50-meter target, to use a military term, is the INF treaty and Russia's compliance and getting back into compliance with that. We've got a couple years with the New START, and we look forward to continue to fulfill our obligations under all those treaties.
So both sides, as you say, are under compliance, but I want to bring up the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, who has opposed arms control treaties, and I want to play a few sound bites from him, starting in 2002 when he opposed the anti-ballistic missile treaty.
Absent an agreement with the Russian side, which is our preference, then we will exercise our unilateral option to withdraw.
I would urge him to get out of the Iran deal completely. I think President Trump should say to Vladimir Putin, you either bring Russia back into compliance with the INF treaty, or we're going to get out of that one too. The next step in the bilateral relationship with Russia is for this administration to abrogate the New START treaty so that we have a nuclear deterrent that's equal to our needs to prevent future conflict.
4 major arms control treaties, 4 treaties that he wanted to leave. The National Security Advisor, led by him, is the U.S. going to withdraw from the New START treaty?
I have no intentions of addressing that today. We've got 2 more years. Again, we've got an interagency process addressing that. The fundamentals of that is what's best for the safety and security of the American people, and it's a complex security environment. We'll see what 2021 holds.
Undersecretary Andrew Thompson, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.